In a world where appearances often mask insidious intentions, where love is used as currency and betrayal is served in whispered threats behind polished doors, the illusion of happiness crumbles faster than the clink of crystal glasses at a celebration built on lies. For Willow, what should have been the happiest day of her life became the most publicly humiliating, emotionally devastating unraveling of everything she once trusted. The day she was to marry Drew Kane turned into a spectacle of collapse, a collapse not just of a wedding, but of her very sense of reality. Behind the carefully curated wedding photos and the smiling faces of guests unaware of the rotting foundation, Drew had spent months weaving a calculated deception. What began as a seemingly noble relationship quickly revealed itself to be a trap designed not with love, but control. Willow had suspected changes in Drew's demeanor for weeks. The sudden interest in her past, the manipulative charm when she questioned him about Michael, the distance he kept while pretending to be close. It wasn't until a confidential nurse slipped her a cryptic warning that Willow began to piece together the truth. Drew had bribed hospital staff to block her visits to Michael, her ex-husband and the father of her child, Willie. The betrayal went deeper than professional sabotage. Drew wasn't just trying to erase the man she once loved. He was rewriting the narrative of her family. By keeping Michael away, he drove a wedge between father and son, feeding Willie lies about abandonment while presenting himself as the steady father figure. Willow's pain wasn't just that Michael was gone, but that her own child was slowly forgetting him, replacing his memory with the man who orchestrated his disappearance. Then came the medical files. A routine health scare had prompted Willow to consult Portia Robinson. But what was supposed to be a private consultation turned into a revelation she could not unsee. Lab reports had been altered. Diagnostic notes didn't match what she remembered being told. With Michael's health in question and his whereabouts still unknown, Willow confronted Portia. At first, the doctor denied everything. But faced with the possibility of being reported, she broke down. Drew had blackmailed her into falsifying Michael's results, using old debts and a colleague's career as leverage. He wanted Michael declared unfit, mentally unstable, anything that would disqualify him as a father or a threat. And Portia had caved. Willow felt the ground shift beneath her. Yet Drew's sins weren't confined to her paternal life. What struck the final blow was the revelation about her own mother, Nina. A woman whose relationship with Willow had only recently begun to heal, whose embrace had finally started to feel like home again. That too had been violated. Drew, ever the opportunist, had seduced Nina under the pretense of shared grief, shared purpose, shared loneliness. Their affair had been ongoing, hidden behind polite smiles at family gatherings and secret rendezvous shielded by business trips. Nina had confessed, in tears, only days before the wedding, tormented by guilt but too weak to stop. She begged Willow not to cancel the ceremony, not to let Drew win, not to destroy everything. But the damage was already done. Still, Willow went through with the planning, not out of hope, but to confront Drew publicly, to strip him of the illusion he had wrapped so tightly around himself. The guests arrived, the flowers bloomed, and the officiant began the ceremonial questions. But when asked if she took this man to be her husband, Willow, her voice trembling but resolute, looked into Drew's eyes and declared, "I do not agree. Because this person has secretly deceived me all this time." A gasp rippled through the room, and Drew's smug confidence faltered. Willow listed every betrayal, each line hitting like a dagger: the bribed nurse, the shattered father-son bond, the coerced lies from Portia, and the affair with Nina. Her voice cracked not with weakness but the sheer emotional weight of everything she had endured in silence. But before she could say more, her knees buckled. The months of stress, manipulation, and heartbreak took their toll. Willow collapsed in front of everyone. Panic erupted. Carly rushed forward. Sunny called for paramedics. Nina froze, face pale as porcelain, while Drew reached out instinctively, only to be shoved away by Dante. Willow was rushed to General Hospital, her white gown soaked in cold sweat, the veil tangled in the chaos. What should have been a sacred union had transformed into a public reckoning, a funeral not for a wedding, but for the trust Willow had buried beneath layers of manipulation. At the hospital, doctors scrambled to stabilize her. Her vitals were erratic. Anxiety attacks, combined with emotional trauma, had caused a near-fatal collapse. Monica stayed by her side, while Brooklyn took custody of Willie. No one knew how long Willow had kept all of this bottled in, how many sleepless nights she endured under Drew's watchful gaze, pretending everything was fine for the sake of her son, her sanity, her family. Meanwhile, the aftermath rippled through Port Charles like an earthquake. Drew, now exposed, refused to leave the city. He claimed Willow was emotionally unstable, doubling down on his narrative that she had been spiraling and lashing out. He retained legal counsel and vowed to clear his name. But few believed him. Carly, though once sympathetic to Drew, found herself questioning every interaction they'd shared. Sunny, who had sensed something off, began to investigate how deeply Drew's influence had infiltrated the community. Nina, in a rare act of transparency, stepped forward. She released a statement admitting to the affair, apologizing not only to Willow but to the entire town. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it signaled a shift, perhaps not in redemption, but in accountability. Portia, facing a medical board review, resigned from her position and submitted a formal confession, exposing Drew's coercion. Her professional life was in shambles, but she hoped her honesty could begin to mend some of what had been broken. Willow's recovery was slow. For days, she barely spoke. When she did, her first words were not of Drew, but of Michael. She asked if he knew, if he was safe, if he had ever given up on her. Jason, who had returned quietly to support her, promised that Michael would be found, that the truth would be pieced together no matter what it cost. A week later, Michael was discovered in a clinic just outside Albany. He had been checked in under a false name, doped and sedated on the basis of Portia's forged diagnosis. Drew had paid off orderlies and ensured he stayed off the grid. The moment Willow saw him again, their hands trembling as they touched for the first time in months, her heart began to stitch itself back together. The wedding had failed, but in its failure, something more important was restored: her agency, her clarity, her strength. She wasn't just a victim. She was a survivor of a psychological campaign that nearly destroyed her. And now, with Michael by her side, she was determined to reclaim her life and rebuild, not for the fairy tale, but for the truth. Drew, discredited and under investigation, remained free, for now. But the walls were closing in. His empire of secrets, once meticulously guarded, was crumbling. And Port Charles, forever changed by the chaos he left behind, would never forget the day Willow said "I do not," and meant it.